In an ever-changing world, Off Hollywood Media presents a voice of truth and inspiration, resonating a vibration of love and understanding, illuminating new paths for new directions, as we, as one, strive for higher and higher levels of consciousness, always remembering life changes. And now, your host, our MC, our master of change, Filippo Voltaggio.
Well, I am here, and I am here. I am so here right now. I feel like I'm feeling everything. And I am also happy to have our guest on the phone today and on our show. And I have this pent-up emotion about it, I have to say, because she's reminding me of somebody very special in my life. And I'll tell you a little bit about our guest, and then I'll tell you about the person that she's reminding me of real quick. Our guest is Ilonka Harezi, and she is somebody who has credentials, a list that I barely see, that goes on so long, and they're just so beautiful. She's a scientist. She's an author. She's an inventor. I'm going to go on and on about her in just a few minutes. And she's a woman. And I say that and I get choked up because this beautiful woman, Ilonka, I'd heard about her for a few years from a friend, Adora Spencer. And Adora, I'm sure you're listening, and actually I think you're in Egypt or something, so maybe you're not listening at this particular time. But when you hear this on the archives, Adora spoke so beautifully of Ilonka and said so many wonderful things. And then just out of the blue, a month or so ago, or whenever it was, Ilonka asked to be my friend on Facebook. And when I saw her picture on Facebook, she reminded me of a woman that is now no longer with us, and she was related to me. And I had not thought of this woman in a long time. And the interesting thing about it, I'm getting all choked up. So I told you I'm here. I'm feeling so much today. Maybe it's the moon or stars. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what's going on, but maybe it's because I'm thinking of this very special lady. She and this other special lady on our show that's bringing this all here together for us right now. But this woman who I'd rather not mention her name because I don't want to implicate anybody else in the story, but she was related to me, and her husband was also related to me, and they lived in Italy. Now, I don't want to put down any culture at all, but when I first met these people as a young adult, I fell in love with this woman. She was intelligent. She was a scientist. She was an artist. She read the tarot. She saw things. She shared things with me that I didn't know of at the time. And I was in awe of her. And then my relative, her husband, walked into the room while she was sharing with me these amazing things and said to her, "Get into the kitchen and cook us some dinner and stop yakking about that crazy stuff."
Oh. Oh.
I'm sorry.
Oh, bless you.
I was young. I didn't know what to do or what to say. And he said, "Come here, let's talk about important things." And then he started to talk to me about the most asinine things I could think of, or he could think of, but he obviously thought they were much more important than what this beautiful woman had to share. And so I realized that she was reduced to a cook and a cleaner in their home when she was one of the most intelligent people I knew, and so much more intelligent than him. And as I left them that evening, she said to me that she knew who I was, although I didn't know what she was saying. And that she knew that I would tell the truth. I'd forgotten all about this. And here I am, years later, decades later, sharing what I believe is the truth. And our guest tonight is a woman who has some truth to share with us. And she is given all due respect that she deserves on this show and in the world. And from her list of awards and recognition and books and lists of who's that she is on, I see that there are people in the world who recognize her for what she knows and what she shares, and appreciate the fact that it all comes in the package of a beautiful, intelligent woman. So, with that introduction that I didn't expect to go where it went, that I'm still surprised at and shaken over, I honor the memory of this beautiful lady, and I look forward to bringing on our guest. And before we do that, I want to remind everybody that you are listening to Life Changes with Filippo, which today could be appropriately called Life Changes for Filippo. And you're listening to us on the BBS Radio Network here every Monday night at 7 p.m. on the BBS Radio Network. And our website is lifechanges.ws, where you could learn more about us and all of our guests, and where you could hear the archives of our shows for all the guests we've had for over a year and a half now, and many of whom have been, I proudly say, women. So, with that, Ilonka Harezi, our guest, is an author, a scientist, an inventor of the Scalar technology, actually, which I know a little about. That I'm happy to say that I know about, and I'm proud that we have something like this on the planet already. And I know there's so much more that we will have on the planet because of her and people like her. She is. She's an expert in quantum mechanics. She is so accomplished, and not just in my eyes, but in the eyes of so many people. People look to her as an expert in Schumann resonance, in mind field interactions, in effects and resonance, period. I really could go on, and at this point, in my state, I better just stop and say, welcome, Ilonka.
Thank you so much. And I think this is, this whole experience, perhaps me even coming on the show, was more for you to experience that time again and to bring that forward into this time and kind of heal from it, because I think it's something that has been with you for all this time, because we are connected in so many ways with everything in the universe through the quantum. Our fields connect just as grains of sand on the ocean, where each grain of sand connects to the other. So if you move one grain of sand, you change the whole beach. And so I think tonight we moved that small grain of sand that connects all of us and connects you to that time in the past that was very sensitive and a loving space for you. And I think this was a really excellent time for you to get that out, and I'm so honored that you could share that with me and with all of us that are listening to you right now, that we could be a part of that time in your life. So thank you so much for honoring us. with that experience. I really appreciate it. Plus, was a beautiful, beautiful introduction. I'm not sure if I'm really quite that capable, but I truly appreciate it. Anyway, it was just really over the top. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
My work, I've been honored and so lucky to share my life with such incredible people, and I believe that, again, as the grains of sand touch each other, as our fields touch each other, because we are not a body with a field, but we're a field with a body. And that field holds all information about us through all time. So you, in seeing that picture of me in Facebook and bringing forth that memory of your friend, instantly we were all connected. Instantly, the audience and all of us are connected into it. And so as soon as you heard my voice or we start to speak, then it evoked that even stronger, that information. And so immediately that whole thing, the whole memory, the whole instance, every cell in your body was resonating to the memory of her and the feeling of her spirit, her energy, her soul, her resonance. So it was a great thing that you were experiencing, and a great way for me to start talking about the quantum and how it affects us all and our choices in life, where they take us, and how we are all involved in this incredible matrix of energy called the quantum.
You know, Ilonka, that's really interesting. First of all, thank you for helping clarify the moment and for sharing what you shared and sharing this moment with me. You are absolutely right, and I couldn't agree more. And there are so many coincidences that obviously are not coincidences, and grains of sand have been moved around all of this situation to make it exactly what it is. But it's interesting how I always get to speak to the guests before the show, and you were the first guest that I wasn't able to get to speak with. And I was disheartened by that because I was so longing to speak with you. And I actually had my monologue already written out and ready to go that was about something completely different, of course. And so, interestingly enough, something that hardly ever happens, you were on the air before we actually went on the air, and the engineer connected us. And I was able to hear your voice, just like you said. And in hearing your voice, immediately, that whole story came back to me like when I had seen the picture. And I was overcome with emotion, and I had to speak the truth that obviously this person had wanted me to, or the energy, or something needed to be cleaned up or cleared up. And here we are. So I don't believe in coincidences. Please talk to us more, since we have a great example on our hands now. What is all this stuff happening around us from a scientific point of view?
Well, it's very interesting how we've been programmed to think of everything in the material and in the physical, when actually it's just the opposite. There's more energy and more space than there is physical matter. If we take an atom and we blow it up to the size of a soccer stadium, the nucleus of that atom would only be the size of the soccer ball in that stadium. And the electrons and protons going around it would only be the size of gnats in that stadium. And the rest is space. So the real science, the real technology of where we need to go is to alter and move that space, not try to move and interact with that small piece of matter, the soccer ball. So we've really never even scratched the surface because we keep going after the things that we can actually see instead of working with the space and energy around everything, and leaving the physical, the spirit, the material part. It's just kind of the afterthought. Basically, our bodies, even when we look at our bodies, they're just kind of a spacesuit that this incredible, infinite spirit inhabits. So we're not a human on a spiritual journey. We're a great spirit on a human journey. And this human body is just a small bit of physical matter that we're using for right now in this time and space to be this spacesuit on this spaceship going 80,000 miles an hour through space, and to have these choices and experiences with which we can grow and we can resonate at a higher level and we can evolve, and then we shed the spacesuit and we go back into the quantum from which we came, which is our true home. So death is really nothing but just an ascension into the quantum, back to the quantum. And I believe that even when we sleep, that our subconscious, we leave our bodies, and the subconscious, which is the real resonance, the real soul part, that infinite spirit of what we are, travels interdimensionally through the past, through the future. And what we come back with that our conscious interprets as dreams is actually our soul traveling during the night and pulling that energy from the quantum back into that infinite spirit, feeding that infinite spirit that really has to go back and renew itself in the quantum during the night. And that's why sleep is so very important, to rejuvenate that inner spirit, that electrical part, that energetic part of what we are. Because that energetic part is really the connection of the spirit. So we are electrical beings. We know that because we use an EEG and an EKG to measure our heart and our brain. And so we know that when we have those readouts on that electrical chart, that's an electrical impulse that we're reading. And so we are electrical, energetic beings that have organized this space and small bit of physical matter. But what we really are, and I can even show this on a computer. I have a special program that I was able to measure the biofield, and I can show where your biofield can go out to 100 feet or more.
Wow. And
so when you walk into a room, you're influencing someone 100 feet away.
Wow.
And you get that feeling, you say, well, that person I'm not vibing with that person. Well, that's because you're exchanging information with that person long before you ever shake their hand, long before you ever say a word. From across the room, you are exchanging information with every person in that room. When you're speaking up, when you're standing in front of an audience and you're speaking, you know if that audience is reacting to you. You feel that energy. You know on that stage if they're getting it or not, or if you're talking to the wall. Because that energy is cycling back and forth. It's all interconnected to you and to that space. So the space is very real, is very solid, and really is the essence of what we are.
Ilonka, I love listening to you talk about this stuff, and the main reason is because I come from an engineering background. So when we connect, you and I, on the scientific side, and yet we are both well aware that there is this other side that people might consider woo-woo, yet everything you're talking about it from science, and if there's fact to it, and not as if, but there is fact to it. The hard part, I think, for most people to reconcile is since we don't see it, we have to take your word for it. But in actuality, the signs are all around us, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone, how often have you sat by the phone and you thought, golly, I wonder how Grandma is, and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's Grandma?
Right.
How did that happen? It's because your field is connected to Grandma. Those grains of sand, those bits of energy interconnecting through that matrix, and your field is touching her field. And she got that message that you were thinking of her. She received that and decided to act upon it. There are many times we think of people and they think of us and they don't act upon it. Myriads of times. But that time she reacted. She says, oh, I got it. I feel it. And so she called you. So it wasn't just, a happenstance. It's because there was an interaction, a transaction on a macro level that even went down to a micro level into the very cell of each person. It's an amazing interhighway, a matrix of energy that we're connected.
Yeah, up until now we've called that coincidence, I think, or at least most of us, and we need to stop.
Yeah, it's not at all, and it's something that I've studied for over 30 years, with some of the most brilliant pioneers in science that I've just been very privileged to be around. Dr. Valerie Hunt and Dr. Andrei Puharich and Bob Beck and all these old guys, and just amazing things that we've seen on instruments, being able to measure it on instruments with magnetometers, with various things. We started back in actually the 70s with Dr. Puharich. We were going around putting EEG, fast Fourier analysis, on measuring the brainwave activity of incredible people that were doing unbelievable things, creative things, artists and shamans and healers and all these various people, writers. Whenever they were in their zone doing their thing, they were always measured at a certain frequency range of alpha. And we found that to be very precise, and it dithered a bit between like 7 and 9 hertz, but it was in the extremely low frequency range always, and they would always go into that zone. When you go into yoga, you're in that zone. And so that's when I decided to work with Tesla and to invent Tesla with Puharich, because I thought, wouldn't it be incredible if we could be in that zone, kind of yoga to go, all the time? How great would that be? Because you can't do that. You can't just stay there in that range. You're cycling up into beta, or get excited, or get on the road and get upset, and with the other drivers, all sorts of things happen. So how could we stay in that nice, peaceful zone? And so that's really how Tesla evolved, was through our research of studying the field and frequencies.
You went and put these in, first you had bracelets, and I know you still did, but then you went and put them in watches, the Philip Stein watches.
Right. Well, they were never in, it was in a bracelet, but it has to have a watch mechanism. If you have something that is passive, like a magnet, the body overrides that signal very quickly because it is passive. For instance, If you go into an apartment and there's a train going by and you think, oh my God, I can't live in this apartment. But after a while, you don't even hear the train.
Right.
So that's the body adjusts to those signals and just kind of tunes it out after a while. So anything passive that's not active, that's not dithering it around, that's not actually working to fool the body constantly, the body adapts to it very, very quickly. So if you use a magnet and it works for you, then you should take it off for a while and then put it back on, and it'll work much better for you because the body will override that signal. The same with any type of subtle energy device, in which they have to be very subtle energy devices. Those bracelets, like with some sort of symbol or design or whatever. I do believe that affects the field, but not for a long period of time. Because it is passive. So we found out that you had to have something that dithered, that jumped around constantly, for the body not to acclimate to that signal. So you have to have, and also what we found, to really send the proper information into the body, we found that something even better than an electromagnetic signal, studying Tesla's work, we found was a scalar quantum signal. And to do that, you have to use an electric field and a magnetic field. And so our electric field came from the battery of a watch battery, and then the magnetic field came from the sweep second-hand escapement in the watch. So then we take the battery, the electric field, and the magnetic field and cancel them against each other with our chip to 0 point. So it's like you want to put out a forest fire, so you build another forest fire. So the two put each other out. So the same way, it's a bucking field effect. So we cancel the two fields using the electric and the magnetic component. So our watch was very active. It dithered around so that it was never right on one frequency, so it stayed very active on the body. And then we also created this scalar field so that it interacted with the meridian system and with the biofield. So it was quite unique. And is quite unique.
Very. And I often wondered why it was attached to the watch, and now it makes sense. You were about to say something else, Ilonka?
Well, and also, it has to be, people say, well, why don't you make a pendant or something? Well, pendants don't work, particularly for protection against electromagnetic fields. People that do that really don't understand the body and how it all works. Where you have to cancel the fields are on the antennas of the body, which the legs and the arms are your antennas. And they're where energy comes in. The left hand side of the body receives energy, and the right hand sends it out. That's why you see yogis always with their left hand cupped and the right hand pointed out, sending the signal out. A priest blesses you with his right hand. You shake hands with your right hand. All of those things are representative of sending energy out on the right and receiving on the left. So all energy comes in on the left, so you have to have the watch on the left-hand side of the body, on the wrist preferably, because it's a triple warmer meridian. So that's where everything begins. And when you want to send a signal, you have to start at that triple warmer meridian on the left-hand side, and then it circulates through the whole meridian system of the body from that point.
Ilonka, I'm laughing to myself because I've seen this technology. I know people that have it, and I've read about it and all that, and I'm talking to the inventor, and I'm tickled on so many levels, and it's great to know a little bit about the ins and outs of why and how, and it's fascinating to know that there is a science to all these things that we may not have given thought to why saints and prophets are depicted the way they are, with one hand cupped and the other closed, and the shaking of the hands and all that. That is fascinating to me, and as are you, and you are brilliant. I am so happy that we're having this conversation, and I know we'll be having so much more. I want to remind everybody that we're talking to Ilonka Harezi, and to learn more about her, of course, you can go to our website at lifechanges.ws, but you could also go to Ilonka's website directly at ilonkaharezi.com, and that's spelled I-L like Larry, O-N like Nancy, K-A like Apple, H like Harry, A again, R like Robert, E-Z like Zebra, I.com. That's ilonkaharezi.com. And again, if you miss how to spell that, you can go to our website, or you could always hear this show again on our archives at lifechanges.ws. There you will find so much information that Ilonka has up on her website, including fun things like t-shirts, but important things like DVDs and books. Two in particular that I want to mention, a DVD called The Resonance in Residence that I can't wait to talk about. She's alluded to some of the things that are in the DVD, and a book, A Soul Breathing. Actually, there's also one called Steppin' Into the Rain, which I like as well. And hopefully we'll get to touch on a little bit about what is in those books. So again, you're listening to Life Changes with Filippo. I am Filippo, and you can hear us on BBS Radio Network every Monday night at 7 p.m., and, of course, catch our shows on our archives at lifechanges.ws. Now, Ilonka, in your books and your DVD, you talk about, and you alluded to this, how this field, the fact that, I love how you say this, that we are not a body with a field, we are a field with a body. I just love that. But you're saying how the reality of this field affects our health, our psyche, our environment, and better yet, something that's even more esoteric, the entire perception of our life. Could you go into that a little bit more, please?
Well, all information is in that field. We actually, with Dr. Robert O. Becker, I'm going to go back to jumping it back and forth into science to let people know that there really is science involved here. And also, if you'd like to see a lot of that science, you can go to www.teslarscience.com
for
you science buffs. But anyway, the body itself, with its molecular structure, with its cellular structure, you can actually go down to the tiniest bit of essence, and you will find the quantum called a centriole. And the centriole is in the very tiniest, it's beyond molecular part. So it goes from that micro part of energy to the macro, which we would call the quantum itself. But that centriole, in the essence of every cell, actually reflects the quantum itself. So there's constantly an energetic exchange between that centriole in the cell and the quantum itself of information. And that information, we know that the cells have memory. That's a scientific fact now. But they don't know where that memory comes from. We know that actually that memory is a reflection of the quantum itself. And that memory is really more than memory. It's information. It's tagged information of everything that we could ever know and ever experience. It's all there. It's like, and it brings me back to thinking about, how people feel that someday, will I go to heaven and will I go to hell, or what's going to happen to me, etc. And will God be up there with a big beard and say, okay, you go to heaven, or you go to hell, or you go to purgatory, and I'm the great judgment in the sky sort of thing. And I think what we have to change our thinking to thinking about God as being a part of us and an energetic exchange of that essence. And to put that more into our minds, I'm going to give you a little thought. Let's say that we're going to go to a great party, and you're in scruffy jeans and whatever, and I drive up in the Mercedes, and I'm in my coiffured gown, and I grab you and I throw you into my Mercedes, and I take you up to this incredible villa, and Mother Teresa's there. John Wayne, everybody else. Okay, and your scruffy, bad hair day, pull you out of the car, and everyone's looking at you. Will you stay? I don't think so.
No.
I think we are going to choose at what level our resonance is. We're going to choose at what level our friends, our peers are going to be. What other souls are we going to surround ourselves with? It's going to be our choice, because we will not be comfortable with those that we don't deserve to be with, that we won't be comfortable with those that are not of the same resonance, of the same essence as our own soul, that's not dressed for the party. We're going to go dressed where we feel that we're comfortable. And so in that essence, every choice that we make in our life, every person that we have in our life, actually leaves an indelible footprint on that energetic pattern that we have. And we take that with us forever. Your wonderful friend, she made an energetic footprint in the pattern of who you are and what you are, and the thought of how sad it is that women are downtrodden and thought of in that way. And I want to leave you with a really good thought in that what you're saying about her is so like me, because I'm also an artist as well. And so it sounds to me like we had many things in common, but the one thing that we did not have in common is that I have a wonderful husband who's incredible and understands me, and if I'm in my zone, he'll jump up and go cook or whatever we need to do. He understands that and is by my side to help me to do whatever I can to change mankind and to assist mankind to grow higher in resonance and consciousness. So,
well, after such a beautiful comment, I think we should go ahead and mention that he's Cortland Reeves, and he himself is one of the foremost experts in lymphatic detoxification therapy, and we might have to have him on the show at some point. And you, Ilonka, you know that we'll have to have you on the show at least 45 more times. At least.
Thank you. You're very blessed. Thank you.
You and I are going to have to connect in person at least that many times and do interviews and all kinds of things, and I look forward to that. By the way, I want to make sure that those who heard that analogy, that worked really well for me, because you've given several analogies today, and I'm so much an analogy person. The one about the being dressed at the party, I want to assure our audience that it's a good analogy that works, but I can assure you that Ilonka, who receives the Dalai Lama and so many other very special people at her home, is not someone that judges people by the way they dress. So I'm sure what's that?
I said, oh my goodness, no. That's just the opposite of what I just said.
Exactly. So I just wanted to make sure, if anybody heard that she is saying that we can see each other for the energy that we are, instead of the physicalness that for whatever reason we are embodying at the moment. And she said so much more. So listen back at lifechanges.ws and hear the archive, and I hope people really get the message message that she's been saying throughout the whole show. And Ilonka, actually, before we go, from a scientist's point of view, and I know I've read enough about you and heard enough about you to know that you live your life according to what you are sharing, and you help other people do too. As a matter of fact, we wrote up on our website how as a child you had this sense, this knowing that you were going to be helping people and you were part of a greater whole, and this change that's taking place. And of course, we know that you are. However, so many of us wake up each day, and some of us are believing in what you're sharing, but we wake up in our bodies and we see ourselves in our mirrors, and we still have to go to work, and we still have a headache, and we're still driving in traffic. So we take our aspirins or our Tylenols for our headache, and we deal with jobs that we don't like. And you're saying if we connect somehow with the quantum, all of this can be different. Please share with us how.
Well, I believe that everything is just what you make it. And, life is definitely something that you have to bring your own joy into it. And my whole thing right now, what I'm working with, this whole program with children, and it's all based on one word, and that's unconditional. When we love unconditionally, when we look at things unconditionally, when we judge unconditionally, the whole world changes, and it's a really hard thing to do, to feel about someone that's hurt you very much. For instance, the man that came in and started yelling at his wife to go in and start cooking and whatever, and that hurt you so much. But yet, that was his choice. That was his reality. That was where he was coming from. And so that's a separate journey than your journey. But guess what? That really sparked something in you that changed your life in a significant way, because it made you realize, hey, there's something wrong with this thinking. There's something wrong that doesn't work with me, that doesn't resonate with me for my path in life. I want to see life in a different way. I want to view women in a different way. I want to honor them in a different way. And so, oddly as it may seem, he really helped you on your journey. He helped you make your life stronger and better, and spiritually, he actually uplifted you. There wouldn't have been a Christ if there wasn't a Judas. So we always have to look at these things in balance. There always is a balance in the universe. The next book that I want to write I want to call it The Snap, because you pull a rubber band way out, and then finally it's got to snap back. So these things that are happening to us right now are getting us ready for that big snap. I think there's a huge consciousness that's about to erupt, and it's going to change the fabric of everything that we ever knew. And, I know I have, and I'm sure everybody out there has gone through some real hard times the last couple of years. I know the toughest ever in my life. But when I really sat down and I thought about it, it's kind of what I prayed for. Because in order for things to change, in order for a higher consciousness to come through, in order for us to shed that materialism and to realize what our families are to us, what our friends are to us, what our children are to us, is to make us stop and take time and realize what's really important in our lives. So to change that consciousness, to go that next level, we really had to have a frying pan hit us in the face. Make us stop. Make us stop for a moment and say, whoa, what the heck was that? You know? Let's take a look at this in a different way and be so thankful for what we have. So thankful. So blessed.
I had this image while you were sharing that of building a home. In the plans, the home looks beautiful and we can't wait to inhabit it. On the other hand, if we're dealing with an empty plot, well, as soon as we decide that we're going to start building, well, dirt's going to be flying and it's not going to look pretty. And then even when the home is close to being done, it's got sawdust all over the place and all of that. But it eventually will be cleaned up and become the beautiful home that we know we want. And so dirt is definitely flying right now.
Yes, it is, and more than dirt.
But well, go ahead and say it. Somebody.
Yeah, but it's all for the best. It's all for the best. It feels really good. And believe me, no one out there has had the hardships that's been thrown to me the last couple of years. I have really put the rubber to the spiritual road, and the tests and the things that have happened to me, everything from a child drowning in my apartment to a fire to, major things that have happened. And through all of it, I just have to look back now and say, oh my goodness, how blessed I am, because it could have been worse. This could have happened, that could have happened. And I've learned that, I've never been so thankful as I am now. And I think that is such a blessing in my life, because it's only through the lessons that we get the blessings.
What you just shared is the start of a whole other show, and I look forward to talking about that and many more other things, but we certainly have covered a lot of ground together, and this, I think, has been a great initiation, not only in yours and my connection, but for our fans and our audience and all of this beautiful group of friends and family that are coming together to share truth and share knowledge and help build that beautiful home that we're talking about, whether that's the spiritual or our planet or whatever that be, or our physical or our quantum. I'm trying to use your words.
Absolutely. That incredible energy.
Well, Ilonka, this has been very, very special. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Actually, you've left us with so much already, but I wanted to make sure that you get the last word.
I think the only thing is just basically what I said before, that I think we have to really count the many, many blessings that we have right now, our health and the blessings of our children and our friends and, all of those around us, especially my husband's now in Haiti, and he's seeing so many horrible things, and he was going to only go there for a week, and now he's been there over a month, and I think he's going to be there another month because there's just so much work to be done there. And, knowing what he has gone through and what he's experienced and what I've seen in India and in Egypt and, many of the places that I've traveled, and I realize how very blessed and lucky we are, that we have electricity, that we have water, that we have hot water, that we have a shower. It's just those small things that we take for granted that we don't understand that most of the world really doesn't even have. So although we're experiencing really tough times, we have to know that at least we have those very essential things that are really very big blessings. And And I just thank God for it, and I thank God for everyone out there and that's listening right now with us. I ask blessings to come on all of them, all of you, and angels to be with you in your cars if you're listening to this in your cars or in your homes or in your bed. And hopefully that we'll all be joined again from out there in the quantum. And remember that I'm only a thought away. So you've connected. You can call me anytime, and my energy and I will be with you.
Indeed, and I look forward to our next connection. Ilonka, thank you so much for being on our show today. This has been incredibly special. I want to remind the audience that we've been talking to Ilonka Harezi, and again, you can find out more about her at our website at lifechanges.ws, and of course at her website, Ilonka Harezi, ILONKAHAREZI.com. And remember her final words with us, those were coming from a scientist. Those were coming from somebody who speaks from proof other than just wishful thinking. So I really appreciate that. And here is yet again somebody else who's speaking to us about how we can change ourselves and help change our world. Here is our very own Dorothy Lee Donahue.
Hi. One of the questions that almost all of my clients ask me is, why do we come to Earth? Why do we choose to live on this crazy and wonderful planet? What is our purpose? What is life all about? And my answer is this: love. Love is always the answer, no matter what the question. Each week, I remind you that you are the only one who can end your suffering, and you can only do this by beginning a love affair with you. So what do I mean? When we truly love ourselves, we begin to make much more elegant choices than when we don't. One of the most elegant choices we can make is to stop living in the past. How many of us are still allowing our past choices to co-create our futures? How many of us are still victims of our childhood stories? How many of us are still stuck in our what-ifs? How many of us are still stuck in the limited beliefs of our parents, or still believe in their character analysis of us? One of my clients just recently told me that his mom was finally trying to make up for all of the time she wasn't there for him when he was a child. She had been in a very abusive marriage and had turned to alcohol to escape the pain. But now she was doing everything she could to make up for that. When I asked him how he felt about that, he said he was still sad and unhappy because it should have been different when he was a child. His "it should have been different" story is keeping him from having a successful and joyful man-woman relationship now. If he could choose to love himself, he could then choose to forgive his mom and appreciate having her love now, because that is what loving oneself could lead to. Holding on to anger over past hurts and what-ifs do not serve us and are not examples of loving ourselves. Let's take a brief look at my interesting life. For most of it, I bought into my family's opinion that I was a very bad girl. And so I turned into a woman who made many less than elegant choices. I honestly didn't know why I chose to do the things I did. And when I finally discovered the underlying reasons, I was shocked and dismayed by the truth. And it took several more years for me to be able to unconditionally love and forgive myself. Loving ourselves means taking responsibility for our actions and our reactions to those we invite into our lives. For way too many years, I blamed my ex-husband for many of my actions and reactions and for most of my problems. And I truly believed for years that I was his victim and played the if-only game for a long, long time. If only is a game we often play, and it is a game that does not serve us at all. However, the moment I began to take responsibility for my life's choices, and the moment I began to choose to love me first before loving anyone else, my life began to dramatically change for the better. Once I began loving me, I couldn't stay angry with anyone, including myself, because it just doesn't feel good. Long, long ago, the Buddha said something like this about anger. Anger is like picking up a red-hot coal to throw at someone. You may not hit that person, but you will most certainly burn yourself while trying. Just today, I had a client who showed how true this is. He is now 67 years old, and he's still so angry with his stepfather that he has temporarily lost control of his ability to speak when he even thinks about the abuse he suffered as a child. For 19 months, he's been unable to think about anything but his stepfather, and because of all of this thought, his joy is gone for the moment. He was unable to speak up for himself as a child, and as much as he would like to scream at his stepfather and attack him verbally the way he had been attacked when he was so young, he's just too good a man to do so. However, this anger has crippled him for most of his life, and thank God he now understands that holding on to anger is not hurting his stepfather at all, but is hurting himself for sure. He now sees that the most elegant choice he can make is to begin to love himself and to forgive himself for believing his stepfather's analysis of his character. It is only through loving ourselves and forgiving ourselves that we can then become the loving beings we are meant to be. Until next week, please remember that you are the power in your world, and you're the guru you've been waiting and looking for. You're the only one who can end your suffering, and you can only do this by beginning a love affair with you. Let us choose to become very conscious co-creators by making elegant choices, and let us never forget that we are powerful beyond measure, and that we are love, we are lovable, and we are loved.
Dorothy, that was actually so beautiful, and it's interesting, crazy, but just like Ilonka was sharing with us today, I just picked up the book that is written by Lucia Renee, who is our next week's guest. And considering the fact that I broke down at the beginning of the show and I talked about how a male was insulting a female that I was very fond of, the book is Unplugging the Patriarchy, a mystical journey into the heart of a new age. How wonderful is that? And what a coincidence. So our next week's guest, Lucia Renee, will be talking about unplugging the patriarchy. So I look forward to that. And I was so delighted to have Ilonka on our show. And thank you, Adora Spencer and Dorothy Donahue, for bringing her on. It's all perfect, isn't it? Remember, you can keep the conversation about just how perfect it is going on our website at lifechanges.ws and on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube, and pretty soon on our Life Changes Network. In the meantime, remember that today's show has been made possible in part by our sponsors, Ionways Water Systems, Change Your Water, Change Your Life, and Dorothy Lee Donahue and Love and Miracles. To learn more about them, visit our sponsor page on our website and click on their respective links. I am Filippo Voltaggio, and it has been my pleasure being of service by hosting Life Changes with Filippo today. I, along with our segment hosts and producers, Dorothy Lee Donahue and Mark Lejour, and our engineer, Seth Hendrick, thank you for joining us and being part of this show and being part of the change we all wish to see in the world. Ciao, everyone.